what I would say is vocabulary is so important because of comprehension. Without comprehension, children can't learn any subject well, and without vocabulary, they can't comprehend. They'll always be on the back foot. I was quite a good student, really. I did my work, and I did toe the line. I wouldn't say I was stellar, but I was a pretty good student. I didn't cause anybody any trouble. Kids will immediately jump to conclusions because that's what they're like. They're quick thinkers, they're fast, and they've immediately gone down the wrong rabbit hole because they don't understand the vocabulary. If you were to take out the dictionary from my books and give it to somebody like HarperCollins or Bloomsbury, they would see my books as overwritten. And that is because they are. David Walliams, I love him. But David Walliams would not write a sentence like I do, because I try to get 2 or 3 synonyms into a sentence. So I'm kind of hammering the story home at them a little bit. But that is so they can, if they don't understand the word and they don't want to look up the word in the dictionary at the bottom of the page, they should be able to infer it from the synonyms that are in that one sentence. So my books basically have that dictionary on every page. So if a child wants to look up a word, and I'm not saying they absolutely should not look up every word, nor should they feel they have to learn every word. It's there if they want to look it up. Especially my son, he still doesn't read. I think he's only ever read 3 books, and they're all mine.
Hello and welcome to the Qualified Tutor Podcast, the podcast that brings you the latest in the world of tutoring, edtech and education, and hopefully inspires in you the big change that each and every one of us is capable of. Qualified Tutor is an industry-leading tutor training organisation and online tutoring community for thousands of tutors around the world. This podcast is the voice of this community, where we aim to hear from tutors, teachers, entrepreneurs, coaches, business experts, students, tutorpreneurs, and more from the world of tutoring about what inspires them every day, how they can help tutors like you, and what they've learnt about tutoring along the way. The question is, what will you learn today? Hello and welcome to the 115th episode of the Qualified Tutor Podcast. My name is Ludo Miller, the host of this podcast. Welcome back to regular listeners. Welcome to any of you for whom this is your first time listening to the Qualified Tutor Podcast. And of course, a huge welcome to our guest today, Sheena Ager. Welcome, Sheena.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me onto the show, Ludo. It's really exciting.
I hope so. We've got a great conversation in store. Now, for listeners who haven't heard of Sheena, I imagine many of you have, because Sheena is in lots of the online tutoring groups that many of our listeners are in too. But as a little background for those of you who don't know Sheena, Sheena hails from Manchester, England, and then on to Anglesey on the northwest coast of Wales, and is a self-proclaimed podcast addict, which can only help today's conversation. And Sheena is the author of 5 vocabulary novels, a term that she coined, as well as 5 accompanying workbooks with more of both sets of works, the novels and the workbooks, coming over the next few months. Sheena wrote the first book, Tangled Time, part of the Cadwaladr Quests serial, with and for her reluctant reader's son. We'll be getting into that a little bit more over the course of the next 20 minutes or so, back when he was studying for the 11 plus. Now, off the back of the success of this book, Sheena then turned the Cadwaladr Quests into a trilogy aimed at year 4 and year 5 students. That's 8 to 10-year-olds. For those of our listeners abroad, and in collaboration with both teachers and tutors, some of whom have appeared as guests on this very podcast, Gemma Zoe Smith and Agnes O'Brien being just 2 of them. Sheena has since produced comprehension and creative writing workbooks, along with her standalone verbal skills workshops. And by popular request, Sheena has penned a series of vocabulary novels aimed at younger readers. So Sheena wrote the Cadwaladr Chronicles, which is a 4-book serial aimed at Year 4 children. So that's around 8 years old, with, as I mentioned, other exciting works to come, which we'll talk a bit about at the end of this podcast. So this episode will be about the power of vocabulary in the progress of children's literacy skills, creativity, and confidence. I cannot wait to get into the conversation. Sheena, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Got a daughter doing A-levels, so it's all quite busy in our house at the moment. No, but I'm very good, thank you. And that was an amazing intro. Thank you, Ludra. I'm very impressed.
No, we for regular listeners of this podcast, including yourself, Sheena, you'll know that we like to kick things off with a new popular segment that I introduced so that you could get a better understanding of our guests. Now, Sheena, I gather that the location of school reports was not quite so successful, but you do have a tale or two for us.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, I'm quite old, so school reports are buried somewhere, but they were lost in a messy parental divorce. However, and this is not great testament to my English skills. The only thing that I have is a wonderful letter that my PE teacher, the lovely Mrs. Lloyd, sent to me after I left school, basically saying that I could be her right wing at any time because my hockey was clearly better than my English. So that's the only thing that I have left over from actual school reports. I think I've still got certificates somewhere, but yeah, that's it, I'm afraid. But I was quite a good student, really. I did my work and I did toe the line. I wouldn't say I was stellar, but I was a pretty good student. I didn't cause anybody any trouble.
Were you a better hockey player than you were a student?
Hockey was my life, actually. I played some county hockey for Gwynedd, so yeah, I enjoyed hockey, and yes, I think I was better at PE than the more academic things. But I've always been a big reader.
Yeah, well, maybe your teacher was right then, all those years ago. So how do you think then that's informed what you do now as an author?
Oh, so I guess if I start with the how I became an author, it might feed into your listeners of maybe what my why is an author, if that helps. So I'm a bit of an accidental author, if I'm truthful. So I was an avid reader as a child. My family, although we were quite a poor working class family, my mum, she was a reader and she took us to the library every single week. And I used to love going to the library, the library cards, just looking through all the books, and I'd come home with a big pile. So I've always been a reader. And when my son wouldn't read, well, actually, there's a little bit of the story mixed up. When I was about 30, I did, and I've not told anybody this before. So, well, nobody in public or Facebook or any of my parents know. I did write sort of 3 chapters of a book, and then, like many authors, the middle bit got hard, and I just left it languishing on the PC somewhere. But then when my son so my daughter did the 11 plus successfully. She was a reader. We did lots of vocab. She wasn't a problem, but my son, he literally would only read the Guinness Book of Records, Ripley's Believe It or Not, which are great books, but they've not got the vocab in. And because they both did the CEM test, which is very vocabulary heavy, and I'd done it with my daughter, I knew what was coming. So with my son, to try and make it interesting, and to try and keep the vocabulary in context, we'd start writing sentences, and those sentences became paragraphs, and so on. Then I thought, hang on a minute, I remembered that book. And literally we got this old PC out of the garage, dug the 3 chapters off the book. I read them and thought, I wonder if I could do something here. And basically that book, very different, but it did become Tangled Time. And I kind of wrote it with my son, for my son. He became my beta reader for it. Well, he was my alpha reader, really. So he would read it, and then he actually started editing it with me, and he enjoyed it. And that became Tangled Time. So that was kind of how I became an author. But the why I like it now is I actually really enjoy liaising with the parents and the kids. I think I'm quite sociable. So, I mean, I didn't realize how much I would need to be involved with social media at first, but that it kind of just fell into place, you know, and it's like I became friendly with people like Agnes, who's also very sociable as well. So I really enjoy helping the parents, but also I like the kids. And recently, because it's 4 years ago nearly since Tangled Time was published, but recently I've started running free weekend weekly sessions. They're not classes, they're not lessons. I'm not a tutor. I don't purport to being a tutor. But I run these free Zoom lessons with the kids, and all they need is a copy of the book, and they come on, we all get on a Zoom call, they all take turns in reading, and then we all discuss the text. And I really, really focus on teaching them inference, because that's where they tend to struggle. And then we talk about the vocabulary. And I mean, obviously, nobody knows the books as I do. So, and the kids like it, and we have a good laugh, and it's really casual. And I pull lots of funny faces and make lots of noises. And that's how they remember the vocab. And that's really the why. So the kind of writing has more come out of, it sounds really cliche, but I actually quite like the teaching part, although I'm not a teacher. So, but I enjoy that. And I guess that's my why, really, and why everything's fed into what I do.
So continuing the why theme, and given that was a wholly complete answer, Sheena, why then is vocabulary such a key part of a child's skill set?
So obviously I can only talk from my experience as a parent, putting these kids through these tests, as an author, writing for them. And from my own experience, I can't speak from being a teacher in the Key Stage 2 system. But what I would say is vocabulary is so important because of comprehension. Without comprehension, children can't learn any subject well. And without vocabulary, they can't comprehend. They'll always be on the back foot in the classroom without vocabulary. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of them would sit there, not put their hands up because they're embarrassed, and so on and so on. I don't think that's so much the case for kids sitting 11 plus, because obviously their parents are coming from a different angle and they know what they need. But yeah, I think it's all about comprehension. And just recently, I was reading Alex Quigley's "Closing the Vocabulary Gap" book, which is for teachers, a great book. And he does an exercise in there where a Year 6 SATs reading comprehension has quite a lot of the words redacted, and to prove how much a child needs to understand to be able to comprehend comfortably. And they worked out that it was 95% of the words. So a child needs to understand 95%. I was flabbergasted by that. I did not realise. And then, you know, he actually cites in there a piece by Dan Willingham, who's a cognitive scientist, and he says it's even higher, 98%, and particularly in text for older children when things become more technical in science and things like that. And so, yeah, I think vocabulary really feeds into comprehension, and it's not explicitly taught. I believe, I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but it's not explicitly taught in state schools per se, whereas with the 11 plus, it is, and it has to be, because these kids are just not going to pass otherwise. So, yeah, I think it's all about understanding, Ludo.
Those are really, I guess, not shocking numbers because
shocked me.
Makes sense, but shocking that that's not seen as kind of widely known or not widely understood.
Well, you know, Alex Quigley's book, I don't know bang on about it, but he's all for. He's actually saying there is a vocabulary gap and I guess he's a teacher. I guess he's actually referring to our system, and I have to say I do agree. I mean, there's another teacher now who's doing great things. A guy called Andrew Jenkins, who writes the Vocabulary Ninja books. He's a deputy head, I believe, and I think his books are being used much more now in state schools. And, I think maybe there is an understanding that vocabulary is important. But, I've seen it myself, evidence in these sessions that I'm running at the weekends, in my free sessions for the kids. Kids will immediately jump to conclusions because that's what they're like. They're quick thinkers, they're fast, and they've immediately gone down the wrong rabbit hole because they don't understand the vocabulary. And hence me writing books with a built-in dictionary on every single page. But yeah, it's the going back to your question. I think it's all about comprehension.
Yeah. So right on that theme, then, what makes your book, Sheena, so different? How are they solving this solution?
Okay, so they are quite different in that. If you were to pick up one of my books and the dictionary on the page was taken away, so the text, the narrative is at the top of the page. The tricky vocabulary, as we like to call it, is bolded and has a footnote. And then at the bottom of the page, there is a correlating dictionary. It's a contextualized dictionary, which I've rewritten so that the definitions are child-friendly, but they've all been checked against the Bible, the Oxford English Dictionary. But obviously we had to rewrite them because we couldn't just lift them up, because that would be they'd be copyright issues with that. So basically, a child can read the text, and if they want to, they can stop and they can look straight at the dictionary at the bottom of the page. But the key thing as well, one of the things that I've really learned certainly with the 11 plus, is that if children do not understand part of speech, that is to say the word class or the word type, they're also scuppered, because obviously one word can appear as a noun, an adjective, a verb, a gerund, and so on and so on. Although gerund, I don't think is a part of speech, but it's just another complication. So my books basically have that dictionary on every page. So if a child wants to look up a word, and I'm not saying they absolutely should not look up every word, nor should they feel they have to learn every word. It's there if they want to look it up. And it means, not that I've got anything against dictionaries, but a dictionary is just another barrier to a child's understanding if they have to go away, start flicking through it. And again, then they've got to start looking up the part of speech. It's like the word snipe appears in my books, okay? But it appears in the context of a verb, of a child making a petty or snide attack. Now, if a child looks up the word snipe in a dictionary, they have to know the context, because, it could mean to shoot from a secret place. Snipe can also mean to outdo somebody at an auction at the last minute. So a child's got to have an amazing understanding before they even choose the word and define what it means. So my books, they don't have to do that, okay? And Kindle actually does that as well, but Kindle doesn't give them the contextualized word. They have to choose it. Whereas my Kindle versions, so they're all on Kindle, they click on the word and it brings up exactly the definition as it appears in the book. So basically they're foolproof definitions with parts of speech. And I don't think anybody else is doing it. And then there's workbooks that actually go with the novels. So again, I don't think there's kind of any other novels out there that have got dedicated workbooks. So the child can read the chapter, do creative writing pieces. The creative writing pieces have got answers and marking guides, which was written with a qualified teacher. And that's, I don't think there's anything else like that out there, really. So yeah, that's how they're different. Okay, let's go.
Welcome everyone to this, the 11 a.m. event on Monday the 24th of January at the Love Tutoring Festival.
Okay, here we go. So the first prize that we are going to give away today is number 9. Number 9 is, I need an extra monitor. That's what I need.
So welcome to the 2 p.m. keynote at the Love Tutoring Festival, day 2, Tuesday the 25th of January. It's 2 p.m. UK time, where many of us here are based. Our speaker today is Michael Bungay-Stanier, who is as you can see here, Wall Street Journal best-selling author on coaching.
Maybe I hand it back to Ludo as a kind of what needs to be said to wrap us up here.
Well, Michael, you've made my job very simple. There doesn't really need to be much more said. That was world class.
Yes, for those of you wondering, those were just a few highlights from the incredible Love Tutoring Festival 2 that took place at the end of January of this year, 2022. The big news from Qualified Tutor and the Love Tutoring Festival team is that we're back from Monday the 27th of June to Friday the 1st of July. The Love Tutoring Festival 3 will return. The focus of this festival is on alignment and new beginnings. The festival will have a slightly different feel to it, but all of the main tenets will still be there. A host of amazing speakers, including world-renowned leaders in education such as Craig Barton, will be joining us for a festival fanfare of training and of connection. Those are the values which hold the Love Tutoring Festival together, and those are the values that we want you to come and take part in over the week of the festival. Head to qualifiedtutor.org/love-tutoring-festival, or simply head to our website qualifiedtutor.org to find out more and book your ticket today.
I feel like the kids reading and absorbing the Cadwaladr books and the workbooks that go alongside are not just learning about vocabulary, they're learning other skills, aren't they? What have you heard or seen are the kind of other skills that kids are learning as part of reading these books?
So I think the skills that they get, there's a quote, and his name escapes me, the guy who said it, and he said, "A word shall be known by the company it keeps." Now, if you were to take out the dictionary from my books and give it to somebody like HarperCollins or Bloomsbury, they would see my books as overwritten. And that is because they are. The prose is what's called purple. You wouldn't write. David Walliams, I love him. But David Walliams would not write a sentence like I do, because I try to get 2 or 3 synonyms into a sentence. So I'm kind of hammering the story home at them a little bit. But that is so they can, if they don't understand a word and they don't want to look up the word in the dictionary at the bottom of the page, they should be able to infer it from the synonyms that are in that one sentence. So that's where my books are different, and that's what I'm seeing. So when I do these sessions with the kids, one of the kids will read a sentence, I'll stop them, and it'll be a really tricky sentence. And I always say to them, okay, kids, don't cheat. Don't look at the dictionary. Look at that word. What does it mean? Look at the company it keeps and tell me. And they can tell me. And that's because I literally overwrite, but it's done very consciously. So yeah, that's what I think they're learning.
Sheena, I know you talked about how you became a writer, but where did this style, do you think, of writing come from?
I think it came from knowing what was needed because of what I'd done with my 2 kids. So what happened with my oldest, she was sitting for Kendrick, and my boys at Reading. Now, they're called, I hate this term, super selectives. And it's not because the kids are any cleverer. It's just that there's no places. So 1,500 kids go for 96 places. And you can't just get in with a pass mark. You have to get in with a stellar pass mark. And with the CEM test, 50% in this area, 50% of the marks were all verbal skills. And my daughter, when she started, the board was GL, which is not quite so vocab heavy, although it is now, but it wasn't then back in the day. And because there was no Facebook groups, because I wasn't even on Facebook then, I was really behind the times. And come the April, so April, May, June, July, August, September, see, I'm not good at maths, I have to count on my hands. 5 months before the test, I found out that Kendrick had swapped boards and it was CEM. So everything we'd learned with CEM went out of the window overnight, and in came this vocab. And it was from that, it made me realise that the vocab that these kids have to learn, it is stellar. And I want to then put in brackets criminal because it is hard, but it's also good for them. You know, my kids don't walk around like precocious, yes, speaking like this and using all these long words, but they've got good vocabularies. And I think it just comes from that at such a young age, especially my son. He still doesn't read. I think he's only ever read 3 books and they're all mine. So, but it's come from that. And I guess it's when I wrote the first book, obviously it was a bit of a baptism of fire. I didn't know what I was doing. And probably, if I'm truthful, I overstuffed that book a little bit. And I think I may go back and do a second edition and just take out anything that I really am now confident was too much. Because I think I also at the time didn't know if I'd ever write another one. I didn't know whether it would be received well. And I honestly wanted to I'm a northerner, I wanted to give people value for money. And I thought if it was me, I'd want as many words in there as I could possibly get. But maybe now I've realised that there's parts of it that I could just take out, wouldn't really be missed for the 11 plus.
And now, a brief word from last week's guest, William Minton.
This is William Minton from Canopy Ed here. What did I learn from being on the Qualified Tutor podcast? The Qualified Tutor podcast gave me an opportunity to connect some of the larger macro trends in tutoring with the micro trends and observations that we have from our own tutoring operation, and to bring them together into a bigger story, which was interesting for me to do, because it's a type of thinking that I hadn't done too much before. What I enjoyed about being a guest on the podcast, I enjoyed talking with Ludo. Ludo is authentically curious and really wants to know and to learn and to connect on an authentic human level. So it was a pleasure talking with Ludo for some of those reasons. And what I would say to a future guest is prepare, know what you want to say. You have ideas to share, otherwise you wouldn't have been invited, and then relax. That's all. Thank you.
This focus on vocabulary is amazing. It's really refreshing. And for those of our listeners who want to dive into the Cadwaladr Quests, I'd be surprised if you didn't want to at least check them out after this conversation. The links to those will be in the show notes below. But I gather there's more to come, Sheena. What's next for you?
So I'm finalising. So the Cadwaladr Chronicles, the books that parents asked me to write for the younger kids, they're actual prequels. So dare I say think Star Wars? I am I'm not comparing myself to George Lucas here, but that was the idea. I thought if I can tie this in and go back, and I went back and set those in the 12th century, and I did that for 2 reasons. My favourite genre of reading personally is historical fiction. I absolutely love it. But also it gave me the opportunity to use oldie worldy classic vocabulary in context, because I was able to have these knights and these pages and these squires using very classic vocabulary, but it was in context because that's the way they would have spoken. So I did that on purpose. And I've got 2 out. The first 2 books are out. Another coming out in July, which I'm just finalising. And then the 4th coming out at Christmas. They're going to have supporting workbooks. And I'm currently working on another standalone verbal skills book. That's the one with the blue triangle there behind me. They're completely standalone. So anybody can buy those. You don't have to have read any books, nothing. And they're very much, they're called verbal skills books. And the reason why I call them verbal skills is they haven't got any verbal reasoning in them. So yes, I'm doing a book for another verbal skills book. And then I think what I'd really like to do is a friend of mine, a tutoring friend of mine who you may know, a lady who founded Education Boutique, Lucy Spencer. She has a lovely saying, which I've stolen, and she says, let your kids read one for the head and one for the heart. So a book you want to read and a book your mum wants you to read. My books are very much for the head, I would say. I mean, although I do get kids who really love them and they write to me, but, it's mum who's going to be saying, read this book. And the genre isn't for everybody. And what I'd really like to do is write some books for the heart. So they won't have a built-in dictionary on every page and they won't be overwritten, but they will challenge the reader. And I've got a really good idea buzzing around in my head. And, it's going to be how I'd like to describe it is David Walliams, but with some tricky vocabulary in. And that's what I'm going to write. And I'm going to put it out there without the dictionary on the page and see how it goes. So, yeah, that's what's in store.
I love it. It's so wonderful having authors on the podcast. We, at the upcoming Love Tutoring Festival 3 happening at the end of next month, a week commencing 27th of June, we have a wonderful event on the Tuesday by an author and author coach, AJ Harper, who's actually helping Julia Silver write Tutoring is Not Plan B, the kind of the vision behind Qualified Tutor, and that is going to be about business publishing and authorship as a part of your business. So it's a very strong message, I think, and I think that what you're showing, Sheena, is that it is a hugely important part of learning is books, and through these books vocabulary can be really targeted, which helps students across all subjects, not just in English. So thank you so much for coming on, Sheena. If there's one final question, it is what is the best way for people to get in touch with you right after this?
Oh, well, thanks again for inviting me onto the show. It's been great, and I know I can talk a lot. The best place for people to find me, if they want to know more about the books, it's probably my website, which is just Slager, that's slager.co.uk. But I'm Slager author on all social media platforms, including, dare I say now, TikTok, which is such a hoot. And I have a very big presence on Facebook. I've got my own Facebook group. I'm not so good on Twitter, but I am there. But Facebook probably, and my website, Ludo. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, there we go. That is your next step, listeners. Thank you very much for joining us for this 115th episode, and we will see you all next time. Thank you very much again, Sheena.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Qualified Tutor Podcast. Whether you're a regular listener of this podcast or you've just stumbled across it, join the Qualified Tutor Podcast group within the Qualified Tutor community to stay up to date with our latest news, offers, workshops, and of course, simply to meet other tutors like you. Whatever your level as a tutor, our training courses will be the next step in your professional development. Visit qualifiedtutor.org/training to find out more about our CPD accredited and Ofqual recognised courses, the first of their kind in the tutoring industry. Your student deserves the best tutor possible. Make that happen today by joining Qualified Tutor